Hi, this video is for Cabalist spec. Cabalist is more of an AoE specialist. They do have a few different buffs which they can expand the AoE up to more targets, make it pretty much up to 8 targets, 5 targets, or single target. Um, really, open world is pretty much where you'd pretty much use Cabalist. Nightmare Risks, especially where you can go up to many targets to have 2 to 3 targets or the 1 target bosses, and you don't really have time to switch. Other than that, dungeons, you really, single target damage is very subpar, very low damage. You really don't want to be running Cabalist for this single target damage. A lot better specs out there than Cabalist. But it does can accommodate many different situations, so Nightmare Rifts is one of the better specs. As I said, it is an AoE spec. Um, so the spec I run is 0 Defiler, 61 Cabalist, 15 Inquisitor. Um, at the moment, these are the masteries I'm using. As always, I do suggest that you read over all the talents, see how things get changed, how they different than just the tooltip, and how they interact with other things. Now, for this I have a few different macros, of course. Um, you have a lot of different debuffs. Some macros I currently use for Cabalist. This is more a single target macro. AoE 1 builder, pretty much. And then a second builder, which also disintegration blows up Tyranny of Deaths, but Bound Fate spreads Tyranny of Deaths. So that's why the two different builders here. As well, there is a Reflect um, ability, so you can cast it on anyone. This macro casts it on yourself. At the moment, I'm not using any K alerts currently for Cabalist. But anyways, for the buffs, we use Rage Blade from Defiler. This means anytime that we're damaged, especially where could be a lot of AoE damaging happening, we get stacks that increase our damage. And that Armor of Devotion increase critical chance strike. Can also bring out the Purge as well. And then in Cabalist, we have our mana channel to restore our mana. I'll skip over some of the damage stuff for now. We have a lot of CC type abilities with our sigils. A sigil of woe removes one buff. We have pretty much another break free called Dark Passage. Teleports us 15 meters forward as well with removing all crowd control effects. Here we have a bit of more control here. Maelstrom pulls into up to 10 enemies to the target's location. So whoever you have targeted at the time and use this on, it pulls the enemies to that location. Tanks hate it when you pull things away from them. You'd rather, if you're going to use this, I suggest you highly target either the thing the tank is targeting or the tank itself. Because sometimes the tank could be targeting something that is farther from them as they yank it in. So if you go onto his target and use this, you could pretty much almost negate his yank to himself or herself. So be very careful how you use Maelstrom. Uh, as I said, it brings it to your target's location. I believe as well you can target a friendly and pull the things to that location. Other than that, we have a few different sigils here other than the Sigil of Woe, which is a debuff. Sigil of Secrecy is an interrupt and debilitates 10 enemies in an area. So, um, no, apparently I can't cast them on myself. Sigil of Ruin is a stun, 10 enemies for 2 seconds. Sigil of Binding is a snare, 10 enemies. Then we have Sigil of Catastrophe, which applies all the sigils to the enemies. So in essence, you have 2 interrupts and debilitates, 2 stuns, 2 snares, 2 purges from that, and with this one, Sigil Spirits, it's just a debuff, increases non-physical damage taken by 5%. This is the same debuff as the Inquisitors, when you're 61 Inquisitor, that Bolt of Depravity does. Obviously, we're not that far up in the... yeah, we're not that far up. Clinging Spirits and Inquisitor, Bolt of Depravity would apply the same debuff that Sigil of Woe, or Sigil of Spirits, applies. As far as I know, that's the only same debuff. I don't think there's any other debuff that overrides that. As well, we have a few different buffs here. The only actual buff that you want to apply before combat and stuff is the Sign of Isaias. The obliteration buffs change how some abilities work. Not all abilities, but some abilities. So focused obliteration is when you need to do single target damage. As you can see, it increases damage by 3%, resists by 3%, greatly increases damage of obliteration abilities, and causes them to deal single target damage. All 3 obliteration buffs here share the same cooldown, so it takes 5 seconds before you're able to switch between them. So you really want to be careful you don't switch by accident. Unbounded obliteration here. All of them increase damage done by 3% and resist by 3%. It just depends. This one says area effect abilities. This one's just increased damage, and this one's area effect ability. So the condensed and unbounded are increased by 3% area effect ones, while focused is all damage is increased by 3%. Unbounded obliteration is your max target buff. So your AoE abilities will do the max targets that they're allowed, whether it be 5, 8, 10. Condensed one, though, is obliteration ability causing to affect up to 5 targets. So when you need to be a little bit more focused, but don't have as many, condensed obliteration does more damage, of course, to that. You'll see in a minute how these affect some other abilities. So we have some combat buffs here. Reversal of Fortune is the single target spell reflect. Mass Reversal is a raid buff spell reflect. Howling Death is 2-minute buff on ourselves. Well, I think on anybody actually that you can put, but I have it in macros to cast at self. To the next, debilitate or interrupt. Dominion resets the cooldown on all our sigils. So as I said, we've pretty much with does not affect the sigil of catastrophe though. So the sigil that applies all of them is a 1 minute cooldown itself. It does not reset that one, but all the other sigils are 30 to 15 seconds. So it resets all of them. So in a way, you have a lot of CC type abilities. Shadow Breach grants stealth while stationary and restores mana, or sorry, health each second, last 10 seconds. It also resets the cooldown of Dark Passage. Dark Passage is our teleport and a CC break. Ravaging Darkness, this is one of the Obliterate abilities. As you can see, there's 3 different tooltips. All depends on what obliteration we have, what it does. So the top one here is the Focus Obliteration, the single target. It deals 22 to 25k death damage with my stats, restores 15% health and mana. The Condensed Obliteration, which is the medium AoE one, deals 17 to 19k death damage up to 5 enemies. So a little bit less damage, but to each target, but deals to more targets, so you end up with more damage. But it restores 6 health and mana to the cleric for each enemy hit, compared to the 15. So you end up with more health and mana with more targets hit. And then the Unbounded Obliteration, Ravaging Darkness, 14 to 16k damage with mine, up to 8 enemies, restores 4 health and 4% health and mana for each enemy hit. So then we have all our normal DPS abilities. So as I said, to watch talents, it is in the talents where Tyranny of Death, if it's applied, Bound Fate will spread it to the enemy's hit. So gotta kind of watch that, so you know how they interact with each other. So Well of Souls here is an AoE on the ground that deals damage over time, up to 8 enemies within it. And up to 8 enemies take additional 10% damage from our Cabalist curses, Disintegration and Bound Fate for 15 seconds. We can only have one of these up at a time, so if you target somewhere else and place it, it gets rid of the first one and the second one gets placed down. Unleash Oblivion, it's a massive damage. It testing out in a dimension found out that it doesn't deal damage to all enemies, but it's something like 20 to 40 enemies in the area it will damage. So it hits a lot of things in the area. 16 to 17k death damage, but what it does is it expands out and then expands in. So it deals that damage twice to all the things that are in there. And what it also does, though, it triggers Tyranny of Death. Now, Tyranny of Death here, what it does is this is a delayed damage ability. It's not a dot. You apply it. Once it is applied, though, on the same target, you can't apply it again, so it is nice to macro. And after 10 seconds, it blows up. If that target dies, it blows up as well. And when it blows up, depending on which obliteration you have on, if it's one of the AoE abilities, it does damage to surrounding units when it blows up. And if they have Tyranny of Death on well, if one blows up and deals damage to another that has Tyranny of Death, that Tyranny of Death blows up. So if you have Tyranny of Death on all the mobs and one of them dies or you trigger it, it blows up all the rest. So as you can see here with the tooltip, focused one on the very top, 19 to 20k death damage after 10 seconds. Yeah, pretty simple there. Second one, 19 to 21k death damage split equally among the 3 enemies after 10 seconds. Total damage is increased by 8% for each additional enemy hit. Triggers early if the enemy dies or is damaged by a cleric's tyranny of death. They all actually say that. The last one with the most targets, 12 to 13k death damage, 8 enemies, triggers after 10 seconds. Doesn't say that more get damaged afterwards. So, 3 enemies, additional enemies get hit by for 80% more additional damage for the middle tier obliteration. Shadow's Touch is our spam cast, very low on the thing. What it does do though, it for single target, it's talented to apply Dark Water. Dark Water is a dot that stacks up to 3 times. Hits pretty hard. Single target, you really don't want it to fall off. This is a lot of damage for single target. Disintegration here, it deals some massive damage, but what it also does, it triggers Tyranny of Death. So Unleash Oblivion, Disintegration, trigger Tyranny of Death, other than the mob dying or 10 seconds expiring, Tyranny of Death will blow up. So in essence, there's 4 ways Tyranny of Death will trigger its damage. So we have 3 curses here. Curse of Discord, just a single target one. Curse of Solitude, and Curse of Anarchy. I just have Curse of Anarchy on my bar. I believe with the talents. Thought it was a talent. Oh, it might be the buff. You really don't want to overwrite your curses because they deal additional damage based on spell power when they expire, or 300% if it's the curse is cleansed, of course. Did not quickly see it, but there is something where you apply a curse on a target and it applies all the other curses. Cabalist curses cause their initial target to take an initial 10% damage from your attacks. So the original target, of course. Eccentric here. Gives your curses a 100% chance to apply all known curses when cast. So, what it does is, Curse of Anarchy is a curse that applies up to many targets. Curse of Solitude can only affect one enemy, and Curse of Discord, I believe, can... I forget if it can be on one or more. So let's just quickly test that. So that has all the curses. So you can apply it once, but the other ones don't seem to get it that are hit with your other curses. Ah, that might be why. Gotta check which buff I have on. So applied that. Yeah, so you can have Curse of Discord on multiples, it does seem. But you have to apply them one by one. So, what's that? So, Curse of Discord's on this one, Curse of Discord's on that one. But because the Curse of Anarchy is an AoE curse that applies to all vicinity, it's applied on all of these, but it doesn't apply Curse of Discord. So it depends up to you which ones you want to be doing. All known curses, of course, applies Curse of Solitude, but the Curse of Solitude only goes on one, so every single time you're applying a curse, you're putting Curse of Solitude and removing it from the one that it was on previously. So might not be worth it to keep on applying Curse of Discord on multiple targets. Now as well, we have Bound Fate, which is our AoE spam. So on focus target, it does 14 to 16k, compared that to Shadow's Breach, 19 to 22. So yeah, better to do single target Shadow of Touch one. And then yeah, it just does AoE. This one, of course, Bound Fate does spread Tyranny of Death, so you really don't even need to try spreading Tyranny of Death and tab targeting. All you have to do is put it on one and Bound Fate away for it to spread. So just single target here. Now, can debuff. That's your own personal debuff. The only ones that have that same debuff is Inquisitors. Apply curses and start your spam macro, which applies Tyranny of Death, Sanction Heretic, and then just starts doing the Shadow's Touch. You could have, because it's just single target, Dark Water is applied, you could make a K-alert for Dark Water, of course. And if you're on the move, you just count casting Bound Fate. If need be, reapply some sigils, debuff them, stun them, CC them, depending on what's happening. And that AoE is pretty much the same. I'll just go to the back to target AoE. So I have two macros. One has the disintegration in it, which causes the Tyranny of Death to activate. So you gotta watch that, which one you're using. So to begin with, you, as again, debuff them, Wells of Souls, apply your curses, apply Tyranny of Death, start spreading it. Unleash Oblivion, which triggers all those Tiring Deaths. Reapply Tiring Death and Spread. And then you can Disintegrate them to trigger again. Almost 300k DPS. And then you can just spam whichever AoE spam when you want. Of course, if you're spamming the Tired Unit for the second one, it will cause Disintegration to trigger when it comes off cooldown. If you ever need mana or some health, because it's not much of a DPS ability, you can use Ravage of Darkness. It does hit up to some targets, so of course make sure that you keep your well up, that's the little ground target, and of course your curses. Obviously with talking, I let them fall off. So actually, we can make K alerts for those. So it's funny with informing other people to think about K alerts that could help them. So that's a debuff, so I'm gonna put over there. Dark Water would be more single target. So these three, you're really paying attention to them. So remember, with this one, the Curse of Anarchy, you want it to expire so it does some damage based on your spell power before you reapply it. So you want that one to fall off completely. So these K alerts and all that will be available on the guild forums for you guys. Remember, for Nightmare Roast and stuff, it's very easy to switch your buff around so you do more damage or less, more damage to the number of targets to maximize your DPS. Very flexible for that. For dungeons, it's great for trash, but you want to switch for bosses. So Hope this was informative for you, and hope you enjoy playing around with Cabalist.